Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. All right, everybody, welcome to Built with Purpose. Today is another episode of Between the Builds, a great chance for us to reflect back on last week's guest. And, I'll be honest with you, last week's guest was one of my favorites, Stan Bikulege. He's the CEO of Novolex, has built and created these multi-billion-dollar year organizations, global 23,000 families, as he calls it, working inside of their ecosystem, and really just has done amazing things. The odd thing, I rarely have guests that are in South Carolina. So I live in Greenville, South Carolina. I grew up in Atlanta, was originally born in Florida. And, what's funny is I wanted today to talk a little bit about roots. And so it was cool to have Stan here in Greenville, living here, and actually being able to talk to him and relate on some things that we enjoy together here in the upstate. But what was interesting is a week ago, I got to go on a customer visit to South Florida. And I went down to South Florida. I flew into Miami. I drove up to Fort Lauderdale and Pompano. And I was actually born in Fort Lauderdale. I was able to drive by my grandma's old house where I just grew up going. I mean, I had these such vivid memories of riding bikes and running up and down the streets and, just being a part. And it was a reminder for me kind of leading into today of how important our roots are. The experiences that you have growing up your entire life ultimately shape who you are today. And those experiences I had back in South Florida, and when I go back there, it all comes rushing back, and I have all these amazing memories. And I remember, the lessons from my parents, and the good lessons that I got from my family, and the bad lessons that I got from my family, and ultimately probably how that shaped me to the guy that I was today. And so that was cool. And when I was reflecting back on Stan, sometimes when you're thinking about building a company, and I can just be self-reflective here for a second, I'm running a company. I've started a company. We've started divisions. We've done new things. We actually just acquired an organization. We have another company we're buying in the next couple of months. We were working on a lot of things in our business. And one of the fears, if I'm being honest, as I think about building the company is, for me, my family is number one most important thing in my life. It's something that I'm not willing to sacrifice for the greater good of, a business or something else. My family, my connection with my wife, connection with my kids is there. And that was deeply rooted from my parents in, growing up, and my grandparents, and just reinforcing how important family is to me. And so sometimes because of that, I see the sacrifice that CEOs and entrepreneurs oftentimes make in their family lives to pursue this greater good. And I'll be honest with you, for somebody that's very heavily rooted in my family, it's a little bit intimidating to think about, growing an organization, especially one that's going to reach across North America, buying companies, having people all over the place. It's intimidating to think about what that could mean for my roots and my family life. And, I think my conversation with Stan, for me, and I had the chance to meet Stan prior to our podcast, but the conversation that I had with Stan was just such a reassurance for me that, look, you can think big. You can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish in life and still make time for those things that are critically important to you. You don't have to sacrifice one thing in order to accomplish another. And so what was interesting with Stan, if anything, it gave me confidence that, our theme this year in our organization is thinking bigger, getting beyond your boundaries. That's really where growth comes from. Thinking bigger is really when you have that, you start thinking about something that, gives you that little pit inside of your stomach. It makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's normally a good sign that you're thinking big enough. So we're trying to push our thinking beyond where we are today in our company. And the thing that I want to make sure that I'm doing is I'm thinking big enough without leaving those important things in my life behind. So, in talking to Stan a number of times, just witnessing and watching how one individual can scale and create such an amazing global organization that touches so many folks but yet still maintains that intense focus inside of his family. And what was interesting is I started thinking about what were the 3 to 4 things that, in my view, really kind of made Stan successful. Or if we were thinking about, if you were, or I was thinking about doing something really big, but yet you're worried about some of these core foundations that you really want to make sure you hang on to. How can you do both? And so the 4 things that I took away from Stan was one, he was rooted in his foundation. It was just second nature for him. He talks so highly about his mother and his father. He wore, he gives his sons a watch for them to carry forward with them. He wears, a ring from his family. Like, you can just tell in talking to him that Stan is rooted in his family. It's how he was raised. And so that just becomes his second nature. That's what he knows. And I would think all of us, if we are self-reflective on, some of us have grown up in really positive childhoods, some of us have grown up in very challenging childhoods, and all of those experiences have shaped us to the type of individual that we are today. But one of the things that Stan had going for him was he was rooted in his family. It was his second nature. The second thing that I thought about with Stan is he made an intentional decision to commit to what's important. He wants to grow a company. He wants to go do these amazing things, but he has this unwavering commitment that he's not willing to let the family connection go by the wayside. So rooted in his foundation, an unwavering commitment to making sure that he is not sacrificing those important values. And then the third thing, he built a support system. He built a support system that would enable him to accomplish these amazing goals, but also make sure that he is upholding this commitment to his family. And, the support system is not just at work, but he talked a lot about building leaders and teams around him that can enable him to scale and grow, right? Not taking on everything himself. But he also talked about having that support system at home, having a wife that understands what he's trying to accomplish, how important the family is, but also some of the sacrifice that he's going to have to make to go attack this greater good. And so he built this support system around him and these systems to inherently allow him to enjoy these commitments that are rooted in his foundation. And then 4, I think the thing outside of that support system is he lived those core values. That family value that he carries forward in everything that he does from his past and his at-home family. He makes the people that he works with a part of the family. When he talked about the people that work for him, he doesn't talk about 23,000 people or employees or individuals. He talks about 23,000 families that they're supporting. And so I think that as he exudes that culture going forward, even helps further reinforce what's important to him back home. So I thought that was really interesting. And I laid that out for us to think about, if we really want to pursue something big, and yet while we pursue something big, we want to make sure we don't sacrifice the things that are important to us. Well, we have to go back and think about these 4 things. One is what's important to us, rooted in our DNA, rooted in our foundation. 2, do we have an unwavering commitment? Are we committed to making sure that we're not leaving that important foundation behind? 3, are we building a support system around us, our friends, our family, our colleagues, our teammates, that are going to ultimately support that commitment that you're making? And then 4, are you living and speaking your values each and every day? If the importance is family, if the importance is God and your religion, if the importance is relationships with your friends or giving back to your community, how are you talking about that outward into your organization that you're leading today? So I thought it was an amazing reflection. It was neat for me to experience a core childhood memory and foundation for me leading into this conversation with Stan, because it just reinforced the things in my life that I can think big, I can accomplish great things, and I can also hold these core foundations very, very tightly and very strongly without sacrificing those. But I have to make sure that I have an unwavering commitment, which I do. I am rooted in that foundation, which I have. I make sure I'm building a support system around me, and that's an area of improvement for me to ensure that support system exists, and then talk about it in everything that I do. So with that, I hope that's great with you. We're going into spring and summertime, really excited about some of the guests that we have coming around the corner. We're going to start augmenting a little bit of our conversation as we go into the coming months and really hit some of the key topics that are out there. One of our next podcasts that we're going to have is actually going to be with artificial intelligence. We're going to have a conversation with artificial intelligence to have it help guide us and lead us into this next evolution. And so I'm really excited about what's to come. I'm so happy that you've taken the time to listen to Built with Purpose. And today was another great episode of Between the Builds. Have an awesome day. See you. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.